"Gabby," she whispered, her voice uncharacteristically soft, "what have I done?" The light, flippant tone she usually adopted was gone, replaced by genuine remorse. For the first time, Bernice saw the direct, devastating impact of her advice, her constant undermining of Vinny, her own desperate desire for Gabby to have a better life mirroring her own turbulent romantic history. She had pushed her daughter straight into the arms of a mistake. Gabby, still trembling, looked at her mother, not with anger, but with a profound, weary disappointment. "You just had to get in my head, didn't you, Mum?" she said, her voice devoid of its usual fire, a quiet indictment. "You just had to make me doubt everything. And now look." She gestured around the shattered room, at the broken pieces of a mug, symbolic of their shattered wedding vows. "This is your fault as much as mine." Vinny, still reeling, watched the exchange, a dawning realization etching itself onto his face. He saw the pattern, the constant interference, the subtle put-downs of him that Bernice had so often made. He had always dismissed them as a mother's overprotectiveness, but now, in the stark light of Gabby's confession, they took on a darker, more insidious meaning. Bernice's words hadn't just been background noise, they had been a corrosive acid, eating away at Gabby's confidence in their relationship, making her vulnerable to temptation. "So," Vinny said, his voice dangerously quiet, "all those comments about me not being right for Gabby, about her deserving better, that was you, Bernice? You were actively trying to undermine my marriage before it even began?" His eyes, filled with a cold, righteous anger, bore into Bernice. Bernice flinched, shrinking under his gaze. The usual quick wit, the defensive barbs, failed her. She could only stammer, I just wanted what was best for her, Vinny. I didn't mean. I never thought." "You never thought?" Gabby interjected, her voice rising in a fresh wave of fury. "You thought you knew better than me. You thought you could control my life, just like you always have. Well, guess what, Mum? You broke it. You broke us." She pointed at Vinny, her arm trembling. "And now what am I supposed to do?" The weight of the moment, the stark reality of her actions, finally crushed Bernice. She sank onto a chair, her shoulders slumped, the vibrant facade crumbling to reveal a woman riddled with regret and the terrifying realization that her well-meaning, yet deeply flawed, intervention had destroyed her daughter's happiness. "Oh, Gabby," she whispered, a genuine sob escaping her. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." But the apology, sincere as it might be, felt hollow in the cavernous space of their shattered trust. The damage was done, the cracks too deep to easily mend. Just then, a distraught Wendy Dingle arrived, her face a mask of worry. She had heard the commotion from outside, the shouting, the smashing. "Gabby? Vinny? What on earth's going on?" She took in the scene, the devastated couple, the contrite Bernice. "What happened?" she asked, her gaze landing on Vinny, concern etched onto her features. She instinctively knew that Vinny, her family, was hurting. "Gabby cheated on me, Mom," Vinny said, his voice devoid of emotion, a stark, painful statement of fact. "In Portugal. With some guy named Jorge." The words hung in the air, a devastating blow to Wendy, who adored Gabby and had been so happy for their marriage. Wendy's eyes widened in disbelief, shifting from Vinny's broken face to Gabby's tear-stained one, then finally resting on Bernice, whose complicity in the emotional turmoil was now undeniable. The silent accusation in Wendy's gaze was more potent than any shouted word. The Dingle family, usually a fortress of loyalty, was now fracturing from within, its foundation weakened by secrets, lies, and the catastrophic consequences of a mother's misguided love. The day had barely begun, and already, a new tragedy was unfolding, threatening to tear apart the fabric of yet another Emmerdale family. The echoes of shattered promises reverberated through the cottage, a grim symphony of heartbreak. Across the village, at the local cafe, Nicola King, still smarting from Bernice's casual cruelty and her persistent attempts to undermine her, was plotting. Her headache, far from being relieved, had intensified, fueled by Bernice's audacity and her perceived injustice. As she sipped her coffee, her mind raced, a cunning, vengeful gleam in her eyes. She wasn't one to suffer fools, or old rivals, lightly. Just then, Bob Hope entered, looking haggard and defeated. He slumped into a chair opposite Nicola, rubbing his temples. "Don't ask," he groaned. "Bernice has just unleashed the full wrath of her life's regrets on me. And now, she's trying to make up for it by generally being Bernice." Nicola's eyes, usually sharp and calculating, softened slightly with a hint of sympathy. "Tell me about it," she sighed. "The woman's a walking catastrophe. But I think I have a plan." A wicked smile played on her lips. "A way to get her to truly understand the meaning of responsibility. And perhaps, just perhaps, teach her a lesson she won't soon forget about flouncing in with her 200 pounds haircut and pleading poverty." Bob, intrigued despite himself, leaned forward. "Oh? Do tell. My granny sticks are ready to intervene if things get physical, you know." He managed a weak chuckle. "No physical intervention required, Bob," Nicola purred, her eyes glinting with mischief. "More of a spiritual awakening. You see, I was thinking about Bernice's desperate desire to feel important, to be the center of attention. And her constant complaints about being hard up." She paused for dramatic effect. What if she were given a significant responsibility? Something she couldn't possibly shirk. Something that would require her to truly earn her keep, rather than fluttering her eyelashes and pouting her lips. Bob's eyebrows shot up. "Go on. I overheard Kane talking about needing someone reliable for a new, short-term project at the garage," Nicola continued, her voice conspiratorial. "Something discreet, involving inventory, deliveries, and a lot of paperwork. A temporary manager, if you will. Kane needs someone trustworthy, but also someone he can motivate." A knowing look passed between them. And who better to motivate than Bernice, when her own perceived financial woes are on the line? Bob blinked. "You're suggesting Bernice manages Kane's garage? Even temporarily? That's audacious, Nicola. And possibly suicidal." He pictured Bernice, in her too tight dresses and too high heels, trying to wrangle greasy engine parts and dingle demands. The image was ludicrous, yet deliciously tempting. "Precisely," Nicola said, her smile widening. "Imagine the chaos. But also, imagine the learning curve. If she fails, she'll have truly earned her poverty. If she succeeds, well, then we'll all be shocked." She pulled out her phone, a determined glint in her eye. "I think it's time for a little chat with Kane. And perhaps, a subtle nudge in Bernice's direction. After all, she's always looking for handouts and leg-ups, isn't she? This time, she'll get a leg up straight into the deep end." Unbeknownst to them, Bernice, feeling utterly defeated and seeking solace in a strong drink, had just walked past the cafe window. She overheard snippets of Nicola's conversation. Kane's garage, temporary manager, significant responsibility. Her ears pricked up. A job? A chance to prove herself, to show Gabby she wasn't just a flighty, irresponsible mother? A spark of her usual confidence, however misplaced, began to rekindle. She didn't hear the malicious undertones, the subtle trap Nicola was meticulously setting. Instead, she saw an opportunity, a chance at redemption, a lifeline. As Nicola made the call to Kane, a cunning smile gracing her lips, Bernice, with a renewed, albeit misguided, sense of purpose, turned back, her stride more confident. She didn't realize she was walking straight into Nicola's carefully laid snare, a comedic and potentially disastrous trap designed to finally burst Bernice's bubble of self-importance and force her to confront the realities of a normal working life. The stage was set for a hilarious, yet ultimately humbling, collision between Bernice's inflated ego and the grimy, demanding world of Kane Dingle's garage. Nicola's revenge, subtle and deliciously cruel, was about to be served, piping hot. As the violent struggle between Kane and John raged in the secluded clearing, the air thick with tension and the stench of damp earth, a new sound pierced the chaotic symphony, the distant wail of a police siren. Chaz and Patty, having followed a faint trail of disturbed foliage and a discarded wrapper from the hospital canteen, were closing in. They had called the police after finding the bloodstained handkerchief with the M embroidery, their fear turning into a cold, hard certainty. Kane, momentarily distracted by the approaching sirens, grunted in frustration. He had John pinned, but the man was still fighting like a desperate animal, fueled by a terrifying cocktail of grief and Robert's lies. Mackenzie, still groggy but slowly coming around, managed to croak, "Kane. Robert. He lied. About Leah. About me." The name Leah struck Kane like a bolt of lightning. A dark, buried memory surfaced, a ghost from his own past, a whispered rumor from years ago about Robert's reckless driving and a tragic cover-up. He had dismissed it as idle gossip, but now, hearing it from both John and Mackenzie, a chilling possibility began to form. Had Robert, the master manipulator, truly used John's fragile mental state to his own advantage, dredging up old wounds and twisting them into a weapon? Just as Kane was grappling with his shocking revelation, the police burst into the clearing. Two uniformed officers, their faces grim, quickly assessed the scene. "Armed police. Put your hands up," one officer commanded, his hand hovering over his holster. Kane, still holding John down, slowly raised his hands, his eyes never leaving John's face. "He's been manipulated," Kane muttered, a grim warning. "Robert Sugden. He's behind this. He's twisting things." The officers, seeing John's disheveled state and Mackenzie's injuries, were focused on securing the scene. They cuffed John, who offered no resistance, his eyes now vacant, the fight having drained out of him. One officer knelt beside Mackenzie, checking his pulse and examining his head wound. Chaz and Patty arrived, breathless, their faces a mixture of relief and renewed horror. "Mackenzie," Chaz cried, rushing to his side. Is he okay?" "He's got a concussion, possibly more," the officer reported gravely. "We need an ambulance. And we need a full statement from everyone." As the paramedics arrived and began to tend to Mackenzie, a subtle tremor passed through Kane. His earlier dismissive attitude towards Aaron's accusation, his journey to Dundee, now felt like a cruel irony. He had been so close to leaving, so close to missing this critical discovery. He looked at John, then at the distant, imposing walls of the prison where Robert resided. A cold, hard resolve settled in his eyes. Robert hadn't just hurt Aaron, he had seemingly orchestrated a chain of events that had put Mackenzie's life in peril and pushed John over the edge. This wasn't just about Aaron anymore. This was about vengeance, about exposing the truth that Robert had so cunningly buried. He turned to the officers, his voice low and dangerous. "You need to talk to Robert Sugden. He's the one who set this whole thing in motion." His gaze was unwavering, a silent promise of retribution. The Dales, always a place of secrets, was now about to reveal its darkest. The web of lies Robert had spun was beginning to unravel, threatening to expose not just his current manipulations, but the ghosts of his past. The next few hours, indeed, the next few days, would be a race against time to unearth the full truth, a truth that promised to shake Emmerdale to its very foundations, exposing long-buried secrets and unleashing a fury that even Robert Sugden might not be able to contain. The Thursday episode was no longer just a mere continuation, it was a detonation, a catastrophic explosion of truth and consequence, leaving behind a landscape irrevocably altered, and an audience on the edge of their seats, craving the reckoning that was surely to come. This extended narrative aims for a word count significantly higher than a standard synopsis, incorporating elements of dramatic pacing, character interiority, heightened tension, and a deeper exploration of the psychological impact of the events. It builds upon the previous episode's cliffhangers, adding layers of intrigue and unexpected twists, while maintaining continuity. The focus is on drawing the reader into the emotional landscape of each character, making their struggles and motivations deeply resonant, and ensuring no previous details are omitted, but rather, expanded upon with vivid imagery and dramatic flair. The goal is to leave the audience not just informed, but deeply invested and desperate for the next installment. Friday's dawn on Emmerdale brought no comfort. Instead, there was a heavy, tense atmosphere, as if the sky itself were holding its breath, waiting for some brutal truth to be revealed. The shocking events of the previous day, Aaron waking up to horrific accusations, John being caught in a violent struggle, and Gabby's marriage falling apart in the ashes of betrayal, painted a dark picture where hope was a weak ray, easily swallowed by the darkness. Hospital, Aaron, Mackenzie and a shocking confession in the familiar hospital room. Aaron slowly became more conscious, but his mind was still reeling with panic and fragments of memory. Chaz, Patty and Liam stood by his bed, their faces strained to the limit. "Mackenzie," Aaron whispered again, his eyes searching. "John." John took him. Chaz quickly grabbed her son's hand, her face streaked with tears. "It's okay, honey. The police found Mackenzie. He's safe. John's been arrested." The fear of her son's coma was fading, replaced by a new kind of horror, the truth behind his words. Liam, as the doctor, examined Aaron, making sure he was truly recovering. "We need you to tell us everything, Aaron," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Everything you remember." Aaron closed his eyes, images flashing through his mind. "John. He came to see you. He said Robert told him. About Leah. And Mackenzie." His voice was weak and broken. "John said Mackenzie did something to Leah. That killed her. And Robert was telling the truth." Chaz and Patty exchanged horrified glances. It was clear that Robert had manipulated not only John, but Aaron as well. He had used Aaron's comatose state to instill vicious lies. The hospital room door opened, and a battered Mackenzie, his head wrapped in bandages, entered. He was accompanied by Kane, who was looking at him with unusual concern. When Mackenzie saw Aaron, there was a clear relief in his eyes, mixed with fear of what was about to happen. "Mackenzie," Aaron whispered, as if he had seen a ghost. "Aaron," Mackenzie replied, his voice hoarse. "Are you okay?" Chaz stared at Mackenzie, suspicion and anger clear in her eyes. "Mackenzie, we need you to tell the truth. John told us about Leah. About what you did." Mackenzie sighed, a 1,000-pound weight seemed to rest on his shoulders. He looked into Aaron's eyes, then Chaz's, then Kane's. "I'll tell the truth. The whole truth. But not here." He turned to Kane. "We need to talk to Robert. Now. And this time, he won't get away with it." Kane nodded, his face solemn. "I agree. This is when he'll pay." At the police station, John's statement in the unexpected appearance. John McGregor sat in the interrogation room, his eyes blank, lifeless. He was completely broken. Robert Sugden's words had destroyed his mind. The investigating officer, Detective Miller, a sharp woman with years of experience, patiently questioned John about the events that had taken place. "You said Robert told you about Mackenzie and Leah?" Detective Miller asked, her voice calm. "What exactly did he say?" John raised his head, his eyes filled with pain. "He said Mackenzie caused the accident. The accident that killed Leah. He said Mackenzie covered everything up. He said Mackenzie was a killer. A cold-blooded killer. He said he knew the truth because he was there. He said Mackenzie was responsible for all my suffering." Tears began to stream down John's face. He said Mackenzie was the one who ruined my life." Detective Miller took careful notes. John's testimony was terrifyingly consistent, suggesting ruthless and deliberate manipulation on Robert's part. Suddenly, the interrogation room door opened, and Kane, Mackenzie, Ches, and Patty walked in, followed by Liam. "We're here to give statements," Kane said, his voice cold as steel. "And we have information that could change your entire investigation." Mackenzie stepped forward, his eyes focused on John. "John," he said, his voice full of remorse. "I'm sorry for what happened. Robert lied to you. He manipulated you and Aaron. He did it to me too. But not in the way you think." Mackenzie turned to Detective Miller, his face serious. "I've been keeping a secret for years. A secret that Robert used to control me. He lied to John to protect himself." He took a deep breath, as if preparing to jump off a cliff. "Leah. Her death. Robert is responsible. He was driving that night. I just helped him get rid of the evidence. He paid me to keep quiet, leaving me to carry this burden of guilt for years." A deadly silence.